Welcome everybody to the conversation today. I've got Dr. Craig Chu, and we're going to talk about his financial journey that he's been on. He's a pediatrician and works in Shreveport, Louisiana. And he recently reached a milestone, an important milestone in paying off some student loans, and was featured at the on the White Coat Investor um, Facebook page. And so I just wanted to have him come on and tell a little bit more about his story, and for us to kind of have a conversation that might inspire other people to do the same thing, and just maybe glean some wisdom from his experiences. So, Dr. Chu, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on today. So just a little bit of background. I'm a pediatrician over here in Shreveport, and I did a fellowship in pediatric critical care. So I work as a part-time general peds hospitalist, and then also work in the pediatric ICU. So those are kind of my main jobs right now.
Cool, that's great. And how long have you been a practicing doctor? When you graduated? You graduated.
2016. So I've been in
Yeah.
practice for a little over 4 years now.
Okay. Great. Um, okay, so I guess just tell me your financial journey, key points along the way that affected your trajectory. Um, and so just kind of tell me just a thumbnail sketch of your financial journey, and kind of what brought you to this point today.
Yeah, man. So it really started off with a mistake, and I think that that
They often do.
I think that's kind of what catapulted it all, really. And so you go through school, you go through training, you don't get any kind of great advice on how to manage your finances or any of the business aspect of medicine. So one of my coworkers had invited their friend over who promoted himself as a financial advisor. And he worked for one of the big companies, sold insurance. He brought us over some food, gave us a presentation. The short of that story is I signed up for whole life for my wife, my then 3-year-old daughter, and myself. And felt like I was on the right track. I had no idea about what investing was, but I was just like,
Mhm.
well, I'm giving this company thousands of dollars, so I must be doing something right, and I'll figure out how it all works at some point later.
Sure.
But just not knowing anything about it, it was kind of scary to read about, and didn't really know kind of where to get in, or really how to even understand where my money was going. So I left it alone for about a year and a half, and didn't realize I didn't have any kind of investment portfolio. It was really just completely lots of money thrown into those whole life policies. And then probably the next milestone was that same friend and I. We were sitting at a Whataburger at midnight, and she was just talking about all of the world's problems. We're solving all of our issues, and just we're talking about investing, and what our friends were doing and how well they were doing with it. And I had no idea what we were talking about, and so just kind of verbalized that, man, I really do need to figure out where my money's going, and committed to her and then my wife the next day, of spending the next year just learning about personal finances, whatever that meant.
Hmm.
So just like we all do, got online, started looking at how do you learn about personal finances? Probably the
Hmm.
first thing I Googled. And you see just hundreds of books.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any friends. It's not something that we talked around the dinner table with my family.
Hmm.
Um, so it was really just trying to find all the resources that were available, and went to the library, and told myself I was going to try to read a book a week. Some of
Hmm.
those were really good, some of them were not. And then when I wasn't reading, if I was working out, if I was on the road, just listening to audiobooks. And then that kind of led me to podcasts, and really just tried to expose myself to all this
Hmm.
financial media as much as I
Yeah.
possibly could. Uh,
Yeah.
and kind of throughout all of that advice you hear, some of it's going to be beneficial, some of it's not going to be relevant.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you start to hear the same themes over and over: pay off debt, invest in these
Yeah.
index funds, save money, don't spend everything.
Hmm.
And so you kind of built this foundation of understanding to where it got a little bit more comfortable to read about, to talk about, to ask somebody about.
Hmm.
And then at some point, at least had enough knowledge to say, okay, well, I need to do something with my loans. There's a lot of debt there,
Mhm.
high interest loans on my student loans, and I refinanced those. And it came up with a 5-year strategy of how to pay that off. And then part of that was even founded in the White Coat Investor.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
talks about really you really need to pay off your loans before you can invest and build wealth. And so I would read about these people that would do it in what seemed to me like extremely fast time periods, a year, 2 years, even
Mhm.
5 years, because my plan initially was a 10 years.
Mhm.
And so to hear that these people do it in a matter of months as opposed to a decade was mind blowing. And it almost became a challenge. Like, I wonder if I can do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, and so that was kind of the next stage of it, was starting to say, okay, here's my debt, here's my issue, here's kind of the focus number one, pay this stuff off, and then I'll figure out where to go after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then a lot of what I would read was talking about these people picking up side gigs and
Mhm.
working extra jobs. And I was trying to figure out, as a pediatrician that works in a hospital, how do you do that? Because as a W-2 employee within a system,
Mhm.
it's hard to create new services or do things that I don't have to run by hospital administration that's within my contract. And so I figured out how to just pick up more shifts. But if that wasn't available, then what else could I do?
Mhm.
Asked around and put myself out there, offered to do all kinds of things or help wherever I could around the hospital. Got told no on a few things, and
Yeah.
just kind of had to not take it personal, but just keep looking.
Sure.
Eventually, landed a gig at the pediatric urgent care,
Mhm.
and would work shifts there, work extra
Mhm.
shifts in the ICU. And then trying to just grow our pediatric program, end up kind of helping develop some procedural and sedation services. So kind of had four different areas I was really focused on, and with my work schedule based on how much free time I needed or how much I wanted to work, usually one of those four things I could fill my time with.
Mhm.
And then all of my extra income would go towards paying down my debt. And that's really kind of when it got to be the boring state, because learning about it was scary and fun. Coming up with goals and plans was really fun. And then even kind of getting into how do I pay off my loans was a fun challenge. And then it came to the point,
Mhm.
okay, this is just what I have to do until this goal is met. Uh,
Yeah.
and at that point, I had a wife and a couple of kids, and so you still have to pay attention to them and make sure they're not neglected. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so, I think it was really kind of tough, or a balancing act, I guess, to not completely commit everything just to my financial goal, but realize that I've got important people around me that I need
Mhm.
to kind of pour into, and that depend on me. So
Yeah.
probably could have done it a little bit faster, but it ended
Mhm.
up taking me about 20 months to pay off my student loans.
Mhm.
And then, while I'm paying those off, really I mean, probably a year where I didn't have to think about kind of what am I going to do tomorrow. It's just like, okay, keep trucking at this. But uh, to make sure that I kind of stayed with it, I had to figure out, okay, well, once this goes over, what can I dream of, or what can I do next?
Mhm.
Because eventually this little kind of blah state will end. Uh,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
that's kind of where I guess you and I kind of initially started having conversations
Mhm.
about kind of, well, what do we do after that? Well, how else can I
Right.
invest, or what do I do with my free time once I'm not working every day that I have off?
Mhm. Mhm.
And really, what does it mean to build wealth? And so,
Sure.
coming up with strategies on how to really develop a diversified investment portfolio,
Mhm.
and kind of cutting ties with my whole life policies and the other two
Mhm.
pseudo advisors that I had, and really trying to just build a team
Mhm.
of people that I can rely on that are in my corner.
Sure.
And so after my loans were paid off, then that's really when I felt like we kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Right.
all that extra income that I had, you could, because we
Mhm.
didn't have a lot of other debt, then it was like, okay, well, now what do you do with it? And how do you invest it? And how do you invest in it wisely for the long term?
Right, right.
And that's kind of the stage where we are now.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, sure. So, as far as it's a great story, and congratulations, by the way, on getting featured there at the White Coat Investor. I know
Yeah, thanks,
Dr.
man.
Dolly's a great guy. I mean, I followed him for a few years now, not probably as closely as you have, but I really appreciate his work and what he's done, especially for doctors and other professionals. I mean, he's got a great program that he can teach you how to do a lot of stuff by yourself. And and that's another thing I think, not everybody needs an advisor at all times. But it's definitely good to have one in your corner if you're at that part in your life, or that turning point where you need one. But at the beginning, you may not need a full-time advisor, or somebody that you have a that you're paying for their services.
Right.
uh, you get on White Coat Investor, and you can get started for free, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a great resource, and so I would certainly recommend for any residents, or any white collar professionals, or anybody else that has any substantial income, or needs to get out of debt, or wants to come up with some strategies to build wealth over time. He's a really great a great resource for that. Um, since you're a young doctor, what do you think young doctors need to know more about in terms of finances? So, where are some of the gaps you think in their plans, and so mistakes, but where are some things where they're lacking maybe?
Yeah, I think we spend so much time in our training and kind of getting through it all. It's learning the sciences, learning pathophysiology, learning anatomy, and for surgeons, learning their technique and building their skills and how to kind of run a practice just from the medicine aspect. But you don't really have any formal training in kind of the business aspect of medicine or how to manage your personal finances. So. Uh, I was probably kind of the one of the more typical kind of routes of how you get into medicine, from pre-K all the way through college, and straight into med school, straight into residency, straight into fellowship. So the most straightforward path into medicine that you could probably have. Um, and most of us are in our early 30s, coming out of school, coming out of training. You're getting your first real job, uh, and you have hundreds of thousands in debt. So
Mhm, mhm,
you have. I remember, my wife and I, we lived off of loans during med school, and I think that
mhm,
was somewhere around 18,000 dollars of loans that we would have for expenses
mhm,
in residency. You're overworked and underpaid, so just by default, the instinct is, man, I need to reward myself. I've
mhm, mhm.
sacrificed my 20s, and I've gotten through all this stuff and all this self praise.
Yep.
Uh, so just the tendencies to spend as much money and celebrate and just really
Mhm.
finally start to live life.
Yeah.
But what I learned is those early stages outside of training are when you can have some of the biggest impact on your future, and that's
Mhm.
just not something that we're told.
Yeah.
Just as we come out of training, it's okay. Well, now you have to just go get a job and make money and start living life.
Mhm, mhm,
But when you're looking not just short term about living for today and what you can afford and what kind of house or car, or what kind of vacations you can go on, but you think of the rest of your life, your long term goals,
yeah.
retirement. And I think one of the things you mentioned to me was, when do you want work to become optional? And
Mhm,
that's just something I never considered. Just
yeah.
because I was like, my dad's 70, he still works full
Mhm,
time, he likes his job. The people I know, all the
mhm,
physicians, surgeons I know, they just do this until they're older because we didn't start until we're later in life. And so,
right.
in theory, you're going to love your job, but what if you don't like where you are, or what if you
Mhm,
don't like working overnight shifts as an ER physician, or picking up extra shifts as a
mhm,
anesthesiologist, or even as a pediatrician? And
right.
so, when you can kind of structure work around your lifestyle, that concept to me was just completely new.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just things we don't talk about during training.
Mm-hmm.
You really just kind of get it ingrained that the harder you work, the more money you make, and
Right.
that's
Right.
really the only option that's out there. But in reality, it's not. Um,
Yeah.
and so, learning how to manage your finances,
Mm-hmm.
to pay off debt and save and invest early,
Yeah. Yeah.
right out of training, I think that's the huge thing that we don't learn in medicine that would probably benefit almost everybody.
Yeah. One of my favorite phrases that Dr. Dolly uses, and he uses it all the time, is "live like a resident." And I think it's such great advice for doctors, particularly because you kind of alluded to this. Doctors have what's called, the economic term would be pent up demand. Um, so you live on, you're making rice and beans through residency. Maybe you're living on your loans, but then when you get out, all of a sudden you get a huge increase in your pay. And
Mhm.
so the natural tendency then is to let your lifestyle expand to meet your income.
Right,
Well, I mean, if you can keep that residency mindset for just a few more years and get your debt paid off, relatively quickly, and start those, get that nest egg started for your retirement. I mean, you get your dollars working for you. The earlier you start that process, the better off you're going to be. I mean, the compounding returns, of a critical mass of savings early in a career just has exponential benefit to you in the long run. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So,
right. Uh,
yeah,
Absolutely. And just getting started early is a huge thing.
yeah,
And for me, I still kind of beat myself up that it took me 2 years after training to kind of really get in deep into it and start to
hmm,
understand how it works and the benefit of doing it early. And I mean, I'm fortunate that I did it before I was 50, but still, I was
hmm,
like, man, I missed out on some crucial years. But I mean, you can't beat yourself up over it. You just
yeah,
have to say,
yeah,
there's no better day than today to get started, and just
exactly,
kind
yeah,
of take that
yeah.
first step, move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never too late until it's too late. And a lot of times I think people get discouraged in that way, and they think, "Oh, I'm 35 and I haven't started anything yet," or whatever,
Right.
however old
Yeah.
however old they are. Well, I mean, it's not too late. Yeah, it's not as good as starting at 25, but I mean, at 35 you can make a huge difference,
Right.
no matter what age you are. But like you said, no matter what age, today is the best day to do something about it,
Right.
and
Oh
forget
yeah.
about what happened in the past. There's nothing you can do about that. But going
Yeah.
forward, you can make a big difference if you start applying some of these principles and doing some of these things. So
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
But back to the question, I really think that's the biggest gap is that you
hmm,
just don't have anybody to teach you, and so to go from kind of science kind of mindset to switching
hmm,
over to any type of finances is very intimidating.
mm,
And then to not have somebody kind of guiding you or even
hmm,
encouraging you, you just
yeah.
you might never do it.
Right, right, sure. And there are different ways you can engage with financial advisors too. And one thing I think maybe it might be good to kind of help talk about the differences in types of advisors that are out there, for
Right,
people. That might be a good discussion. I mean, basically, you want to stay away from people that are stockbrokers. Insurance, it's important to have insurance, and insurance salesmen aren't necessarily bad, but probably won't stay away from whole life policies, in general, and annuities and some of the products that some insurance, companies will sell you. Keep your investments on one side and your insurance on the other, and kind of keep those two things separate. Whenever they try to blend those together, what happens is, the yearly expenses become exorbitant. In some of those products, so you just got to be really careful about that. Try to find somebody that's got the heart of a teacher. I think is important. Find somebody that is a fiduciary, and doctors, I think, of all people, ought to understand what the fiduciary responsibility means. If and I give this example a lot of times when I'm talking to people to talk about the difference between a fiduciary advisor and a salesperson. If somebody was going to come to a doctor or a pharmaceutical sales rep to get advice on drugs, which one is objective and which one is not? you
right,
know,
yeah,
and that's a pretty clear, I think, example. When you go to a broker, it's kind of like going to a pharmaceutical sales rep. Not to say that there's anything wrong with being a pharmaceutical sales rep, but you know what company they work for, where their interest lies. and it's important to know that. But with a doctor, when you go to a doctor, they're giving you personalized advice. They're doing what's in your best interest. They're not getting any kickbacks from Pfizer or any of these pharmaceutical companies. They have a fiduciary obligation to the patient to do what's in their best interest. So I think in the financial advisor relationship, if you're to that point, I think that's an important thing to be looking for, is that fiduciary obligation.
Yeah.
So
What's your recommendation on how do you find an advisor who is a
sure.
fiduciary? Because to me, I mean, I
Mhm.
was fortunate that you were,
Mhm. Yeah.
because once we started talking, and then, but even friends now ask me, "Hey, who would you recommend?" Or
Yeah.
they're in different towns or different parts of the
Mhm.
country, and it's hard
Yeah.
to kind of direct them in that. So, what would you
Sure.
say?
Yeah, there are two main ways. I mean, not every certified financial planner always acts as a fiduciary, but most CFPs are fiduciaries. So certified financial planning, that credential is a pretty good indication. Um, Beyond that, and so then the way you would figure that out is go to www.cfp.net, and then there's a button on there that says find an advisor.
Mhm.
And then another one is NAPFA, National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. And in that group, that's a subset even of that is only people that take their fee only, what you would call fee only. And what fee only means is they don't get paid by any third party. The only people that pay the fee only advisors are the clients themselves. And so it's just like a doctor relationship. You don't make money by selling certain drugs to
Right.
clients. You sell your expertise and your time to them, and giving them objective advice about their health. And so that's the same kind of relationship you want to be looking for. And NAPFA is kind of the gold standard. I mean, anybody that's associated with NAPFA as an advisor is going to be going to have the fiduciary responsibility. They're not going to get paid by any third party. They're not going to make any commissions. They're not going to make any what are called 12B1 fees or trails that are kind of recurring revenue from different companies that would have them sell their mutual fund. Um, and so it's just you can just be much more sure that the advice you're getting from this person, if they're a member of NAPFA or if they're a CFP, they're going to be a whole lot more objective. Those are the two best ways I think to do it. There are other ways, but and then I think again the third part is make sure when you're talking to somebody that they have the heart of a teacher. Dave Ramsey talks about this a lot, and I think he's exactly right. You don't want a salesman, you don't want a flashy salesman that wears. I mean, it's fine if they wear a suit, but you don't want like a flashy salesman that's going to put a lot of pressure on you to do stuff. You want somebody that's going to explain to you why you're doing this, so that you can understand it, so that you can feel good about it, so that you don't have any buyer's remorse after making a financial decision, that after somebody has badgered you into doing something that you aren't really sure about. So I guess those are the three things I would say: CFP, NAPFA, heart of a teacher. And if you've got and fiduciary, I guess just make sure it's a fiduciary you're talking to. And if you're
Yeah.
you're looking on the CFP board and the NAPFA website, then you'll be covered there.
I remember even as I started reading books and trying to find advice on my own, I would come across words like fiduciary. And I
Hmm.
mean, there's a whole language in the kind of personal finance world
Hmm.
that, I mean, it's just like learning Spanish. It's just like
Yeah.
learning medical
Yeah.
language. I mean, there's just,
Hmm.
I would hear these things and would pick up on maybe 10% of what somebody would say in a podcast because I had no idea the
Yeah.
rest of it, what they were mentioning. And
Hmm.
so I really just had to write those terms down.
Hmm.
Fiduciary, what is ETF, what is mutual fund?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I have a
Yeah.
notebook and I would just have to say, look this up. And I'd
Yeah.
write it down. And when I'd read it in the next book, I would have to refer to that and say, what does that mean?
Sure.
Or is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I mean, it was as simple as that. And I mean, part of it was pride. I was just like, well, I don't want to ask somebody. That's kind of embarrassing. And so I would just have to learn that
Yeah.
language on my own. And you
Yeah.
hear those same words over and over, fiduciary.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, well, that's obviously an important thing. If everybody's
Hmm.
kind of saying that across the board, it's really something that I need to look into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and it really is. I mean, just kind of the
Hmm.
relationship you and I have had over the
Hmm.
years, as you get to know kind of my situation, my
Hmm.
background, my family, and my
Hmm.
goals. then it
Yeah.
really is more than, hey, just go invest $10 into this stock. And it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's incredible what a great financial advisor can be for
Mhm.
somebody. And you mentioned Dr. Bali, and he has a whole course on called Fire Your Financial Advisor, and he
Mhm.
even kind of says, well, okay, that's not the actual goal, but it's enough to learn
Mhm.
how to do this on your own if you want to.
Right, right.
And
Sure.
he does give you all the resources, like you said,
Mhm.
but also, as you're constantly planning, things change, your
Mhm.
situation
Mhm.
changes. You want to move, you want to get a different job, you want to find a better location that might take a pay
Mhm.
cut, or you have another kid, whatever it is.
Mhm.
It's just great to have a guy like you in my corner just say, hey, okay,
Yeah.
now I've got this new hurdle. I know we
Mhm.
talked about, the plan and
Mhm.
what it looked like last year, but now things are different. Now what do we do? How do we adjust
Sure.
it? How do we still meet our goals?
Yeah, yeah.
And so having that ongoing relationship and conversation
Mhm.
is huge, because it's not a one time set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It changes constantly to
yeah,
some degree. The investment, and it's funny because, a lot of when you think about a financial advisor, I think a lot of people just think about, oh, I got to get me a guy that's going to put me in stocks. Well, I mean, yeah, but that's such a small part of it, really. I mean,
yeah,
in the big scheme of things. I mean, what I spend my time doing is just I sit around and think and listen to, you know, endless YouTube videos about different strategies and different things like that, so that whenever I'm talking to a client and they tell me I've got this going on, then that triggers me to go back and think about what I just learned, so I can
right.
give you some up to date information or whatever about it. And that's really, I think, where the big value is just in the ongoing comprehensiveness of the financial advising
Yeah.
process. All right, Craig, did you have any concluding thoughts on anything we've talked about? Anything you wanted to recap, or anything that we might have missed that you'd want to cover?
No, I think it, the learning curve is very steep. Was for me at least, to have no background in it, and then really to say, how do you kind of uh, get control and have some understanding in this aspect of your life. And really, I think that just exposing yourself to as much just media that you can
Mhm.
was very, very helpful. And for me, like you mentioned early on, having the white coat investor,
Mhm.
really somebody who um, does have that kind of mentality of kind of the heart of a teacher,
Mhm.
really.
Mhm.
Um, I think that having that as a guide, and then also looking at all these other resources kind of as time goes on, it really was helpful, because not a lot of the books or things I would see or hear would talk to kind of people in my stage of life.
Mhm.
It would suggest, hey, what do you do with uh, with your life? Do you go to college or not? Is the
Mhm.
ROI, or the return on investment of getting this extra education worth it?
Mhm.
And I'm already in
Mhm.
med school at that point. I was like, well, too late for me to undo
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so, and what do you do for your first job when you're 22? Or what do you do with your income if you're the average income, 40,
Mhm.
50,000,
Mhm.
which is all relevant to millions of people, but just it didn't fit necessarily where I was or my family
Mhm.
was. So
Sure.
we're just in a different situation.
Mhm.
And kind of how do you optimize that? And so really just kind of having the white coat investor as a foundation, and
Mhm.
then just reading as much as you possibly could to understand it,
Yeah.
really did help a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think uh, educating yourself, getting some good people in your corner,
Mhm.
those are crucial things to kind of make sure you don't make these huge mistakes. And if you do, somebody can kind of help you undo them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's kind of what you've done for us, absolutely. And then uh, a lot of people end up enjoying it, and it becomes a hobby to listen to it, talk about it. But it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be. And so I know
Right.
a lot of people that really just say, "Hey, I don't want to do that kind of stuff." Just I'd rather go watch a
Mhm.
movie or go on vacation somewhere rather than reading another book about investments. And that's fine as well. But as long as you have some foundational understanding, and then other people in your corner to help you make those decisions or navigate those kind of changes in life. I think that uh, that's a big thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's pretty much all the questions we were going to cover today to talk about some of this. I appreciate you, being transparent, telling the audience, whoever's going to be watching this, your story, and I thought it would be fun for us to kind of end this on some current events because as we record this is Friday. What day is it? January 29th. Yeah, Friday, January 29th. One of the most shocking stock market events in recent memory, maybe since the 2008 financial crisis. Well, I don't know. I guess March of 2020 was probably
Wow.
worse when it
Yeah.
dropped. But I mean, this is a big deal. What happened this week
Yeah.
with GameStop and some of these internet trolls on Reddit. And so I don't know how much you followed that, but basically you had these hedge funds that were betting that GameStop, the stock, the price would go down, and so they did what's called a short. And when you short something, you basically borrow the shares from some people. So you owe them, like, let's just give an example. Let's say I want to short GameStop. You've got one share of GameStop at $10, but I think it's going to go to 5. So I borrow the share of stock from you that at $10, and then I sell it to somebody else for $10. I still owe you a $10 share, or I still owe you a share of GameStop stock.
Mhm.
If it goes down to $5, then I can buy the share back, give you your share back, and I've made $5. Right? That makes sense so far.
Right.
What
Yeah.
we're talking about?
Mhm.
Yeah. So these people in a hedge fund shorted like 130 or 140% of the shares outstanding of GameStop, right? And so they had all these obligations to give back shares of GameStop that they didn't own and that they couldn't reasonably even get. And so these Redditors found out about it and they went out and they started buying up all the GameStop stock so that when it came time for the hedge fund guys to give the shares back, they wouldn't have them, and they would be in a situation where they would have to buy them from the Redditors at an inflated price. And they were doing this, they started doing this back when the stock was $4 a share or something like that. And now, as of, I don't know what it is right now, but earlier today it was back up to $350 per share. And so there's a lot of controversy about what this means now. And one thing I will say is this is not this is not a strategy I would recommend to anybody. It's not something you want to get
Uh,
involved in, I don't think, just because of the risk. I mean, it's just a huge risk. But these guys, I mean, it's really impressive that they did this, that they were able to pull it off. I mean, it's if you had told me 2 months ago, what do you think a group of internet trolls, what are the chances of them successfully pulling off something like this? I would have said it's impossible. There's no way they could do it. But there were like 5 million people on this subreddit. It's Wall Street Bets subreddit, and they all just worked together and bought up all these shares, and they're holding them, and they're not selling them, and so the price just keeps getting bid up and up and up on a company that's not worth anything
yeah.
really. I mean, GameStop is, they were right. The hedge fund guys were right in that GameStop is a failing company, because which is, unfortunately, fortunately, whatever, however you want to look at it, what's happening to a lot of brick and mortar establishments, they're all getting kind of digitized and put in the cyberspace. Amazon, I mean, who goes and buys a video game at a store anymore? I mean, it just really doesn't happen. It's just kind of they're going the way of Blockbuster basically.
Right.
But all these redditors are going out there
Yeah.
buying this stock at these ridiculous prices and holding it and refusing to sell it back to the hedge fund so that they can cover their shorts, so that they can give the share back to the people that they originally borrowed it from. I mean, it's just really, and so they're having to. So you think about it. Shorting a stock is the polar opposite of buying a stock. When you buy a stock, your upside potential is pretty much unlimited because the stock can go up forever. Like if you bought Apple stock back in 2003 or 4 for like, I don't know, it was a few dollars back then, and you'd have like thousands of percent return at this point. Um, and so, but anyway, these guys have been able to successfully do this and brought Wall Street to their knees on some of this. So
Yeah.
it's really just a fascinating story of what can happen in the market and some of the risks that are out there. I don't know what the fallout's going to be of this. Obviously, I think there's probably going to be a call for more regulation, and I don't know that that's going to give them any, It's not going to benefit. I don't think the Redditors. They're probably not going to get what they want out of it, because I'm afraid that the people that they're causing to go to their knees are going to be the ones that write the new rules. So, but anyway, it kind of exposes. There's a lot of exposing that's going on, because we don't know exactly what's going on with some of these platforms and trading companies that are halting the trades on GameStop yesterday. A lot of the Robinhood people were upset because Robinhood turned off the ability to purchase GameStop. You could only sell it. So, I mean, think about what that does. And what happened was, people were thinking, I mean, you got all these people that are holding it, and they couldn't buy anymore. They couldn't buy from each other. They couldn't buy it. They could only sell it, which is really odd to me. That, like, so who's buying it? I mean, somebody's got to buy it. If you sell it, somebody's got to be buying it, because somebody's got to give you the money for it. And so a lot of people are speculating, and again, I don't know what's going on here. There may be a logical explanation for what Robinhood did, but a lot of people are speculating that Robinhood got a call from the hedge fund people and like, hey, stop these people from doing this. We'll see what happens. I'm sure there's going to be lawsuits. There're going to be movies. Like, I mean, this is going to be The Big Short on steroids, The Big Short 2 or whatever. And I think I was reading that Michael Burry. I don't know if you saw The Big Short back when it came out. It was about the 2008 financial crisis, but um, the Michael Burry was kind of the investor that shorted all those bonds, and so he took this huge bet on the failure of these bonds, and it ended up working out, but it took longer than he thought it would, just because of the shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes for these companies to be supported by the moneyed interests. But ultimately it failed, and he made a huge amount of money for his hedge fund. But I think he may have been involved in this one as well, on the Redditor side, not on the failing side. But so anyway, it was just one of those things where it was the perfect storm. You had all these people that became aware of this huge asymmetry of shorts relative to the supply of stock, and they all bought and held this. And what's really shocking and hard, if you're going to do something like this, is not that they bought it; it's that they were able to hold it for so long and drive the price so far up. Because the tendency would be, like, if normally if people buy something and it goes up 3 or 4 or 500%, they want to sell it, and take profits. Well, these guys, I mean, some of them, one of the bigger holders of this was a guy that started buying back 18 months ago. I think he started accumulating. He put like 53, like his life savings, he put like $53,000 into it. And as of the day before yesterday, I think his trade, like his account, was worth $22 million. So, I mean, you think about that, like, a guy, this is just a regular guy. I mean, he's not, he wasn't like a hedge fund billionaire, not a rich guy or whatever, but he was able to hold that amount of money. And as far as I know, he's still holding it. I mean, you'd think surely he's going to take some of his, chips off the table, I mean, to do that. I mean, but he's like, some of these guys are just like, I don't care. I'm not selling. I want them to pay, for what they're doing, what they've done to us. And they're all making fun of them, because some of them are on TV, crying about what's going on. Oh, these Redditors are being mean to us. And some of these are cutthroat business people. I mean, these guys are they're not little lambs that are up there. They're playing a game that's got risks, and the Redditors are like, look, you're playing this game. You took on the risk. You should pay for the risk that you're taking. So, boy, this is really it's gonna reset the risk metrics of this game. That's for sure. So, and it's I think it's good in some ways. What's happening is going to cause people to reassess risks. And I think it's unfortunate, though, for a lot of the Redditors. Even I think a lot of them are going to get hurt pretty bad financially by this. If they're left holding the bag. But a lot of them are going to make a whole lot of money too. So it's really quite a fascinating thing.
Just first off, this is not at all part of investing. I mean,
No.
it's just it's playing a game and gambling, essentially, getting into it. And just I started looking at that Wall Street Bets, and the stuff that they were writing on there, man. I mean, it's really just kind of this crazy, the movement they've had, this kind of us versus them, the small guy versus the big guy kind of thing. And so to imagine it going from 2 million to 4 million, now 5.5, almost 6 million followers in a
Mhm.
week. To
Yeah.
be all they talk about on CNBC,
Mhm.
international news, the New York Times, everybody's talking about this subreddit.
Mhm.
And just to, these people, some of them are buying one or two shares,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's it, but
Just
that's
holding
all
it.
they can
Yeah.
afford, and they're
Mhm.
like, you know what, I'm going to do my part. Some of
Mhm.
them are
Mhm.
hundreds or thousands, and
Mhm.
they know the risk because they're buying it three. I mean, it was up to what, $500 or something a share.
Yeah, I think yeah.
uh,
It's
and
crazy.
that's insane on a company like this, who their intrinsic value is maybe, $4 or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so just to buy it on principle,
Mhm.
and not as an investment or not as a money making proposition, is just mind blowing. Like you
Yeah.
said, the fact that they're able to pull that off, and then these other companies that they're kind of going after as well, it just shakes
Mhm.
up the whole thing. And I couldn't imagine being a professional who, your career and livelihood revolves around
Mhm.
analyzing all of these things, every trend, and understanding
Yeah.
companies. And then you got a bunch of just random people who jump on a bandwagon,
Mhm.
and the difference it can make in the entire country is just
Yeah.
crazy, crazy.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's
Uh,
just I've never seen anything like this. It shows the power. I mean, it's a cautionary tale, but it's also, it shows the power of groups, groups of people who get fed up with something. And I think some of their grief is justified. I mean, I think, there's a lot of games that happen in Wall Street, and people, that play games with people's livelihoods and stuff like that. And I mean, I can see, from an ethical, moral standpoint, where they're kind of fed up with it. And especially when, they get on TV and they cry about what these guys are doing to them. Well, I mean, hey, this is a game, you chose to play this game,
right.
and I think,
Yeah.
Dave Portnoy, I don't know if you follow Dave Portnoy much, but he's
Yeah.
the, Barstool Sports guy. He's like, it's like if you're playing a football game and it's the fourth quarter and you're losing, and you get the referee to add 20 minutes to the clock to change it's changing the rules of the game while you're playing, for them to do some of these shenanigans
Yeah.
behind the scene. I'm going to say allegedly, because I don't know what's going on for sure, but
Yeah.
there's lots of
Yeah.
allegations that are going around about what's happening there, the halting of the trading, and all that stuff. So, but really, boy, it is really
Yeah.
a
No.
fascinating story. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's, beyond me, that you're talking about the whole Robin Hood stuff, and how they can
yeah,
halt trading or halt buying of
yeah,
certain individual stocks.
yeah,
That just, I couldn't fathom using a trading platform that
yeah,
almost manipulates it and forces the stock prices to drop because you can't buy. And so, of
yeah,
course, people are
yeah.
going to panic and sell. And
Mhm,
so,
mhm.
uh,
I
for
could
them to
respect it.
dictate how that goes is just kind of beyond
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I mean, I could see him saying, because sometimes they have like stops where no buying or selling.
Right.
That
Right.
would make more sense, because then you can
Yeah.
just, okay, let's rest here for a minute. But
Yeah.
if you just halt buying and all you can do is sell, that like, because some people were saying one of the allegations is that the hedge funds were then selling the shares back and forth to each other behind the scenes and causing the
Oh,
price to
yeah.
go down, which caused a panic, which caused some of the holders to sell some. But it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Those guys held, because I
Yeah.
think, because probably the Wall Street Bets guy came on there and said, "Don't sell. Just hold on. This
Yeah.
is a game. They're trying to shake us
Yeah.
out. They're trying to shake out the weekends. Just hold on." And there are all kinds of
Yeah.
funny memes on that I can't show on this, but
Oh my. Yeah, man, those are hilarious,
the
man. I
the
mean,
the
just
memes
the
on this are
language
just,
usage and stuff is
yeah,
it's oh
yeah.
man, it's
It's
incredible.
it is.
But
It's just unbelievable. So, but yeah, and
yeah,
then last night, of course, Elon Musk. I don't know if you knew the kind of backstory on this, but Melvin Capital is kind of one of the big hedge fund companies that is behind
yeah,
this, or that's
right.
that's involved in it, and they had tried to short Tesla back. I don't know how long ago it was, but anyway,
Oh, really?
it's yeah, yeah. So
That's
it's funny
why
to watch.
Elon Musk. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny to watch Elon Musk kind of get on this bandwagon, and he's kind of, egging these people on to continue. Who knows? He may have thrown some money in there with it too. I could definitely see him, doing something like that.
Oh, I could
Uh,
see him doing that, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then in the middle of the night last night, like it's so weird. Like I woke up at 2 o'clock, and I was like, I'm gonna check Twitter and see what's going on just to see if anything happened. Well, Twitter was ablaze because Elon Musk had changed his Twitter bio to just say Bitcoin. So they were just going crazy about that.
Oh my goodness, man.
It's unbelievable.
Dude,
And
I
so,
haven't seen one man be able to like influence the markets. I mean, with his
oh yeah,
tweets and
yeah,
kind of his opinions on things, it'll shake stuff up
oh,
almost every time.
it's
To have
unreal.
that kind of power as a single person, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
but
man.
it's fun to watch, absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I appreciate the time here, and I think this has been a helpful conversation. And if you guys have any, hopefully, I've got a book, CFO Dad, that you can pick up on Amazon. In fact, here I can do an announcement here. Breaking news. Um, my brother actually got me he paid for my book to be put in audio format, and so that's going to be going live anytime now on Amazon on Audible, and so you can get the book on audio. And I think it can, along with some of the other resources mentioned here, I think it would be a helpful resource for people to be able to get started on their own with, getting on a good financial trajectory. So, Craig, I appreciate your time here. I hope this has been helpful for a lot of people, and I know it has been, and it will have been when everybody gets to see this and hear about your story. So, thank you very much.
no, man, thanks for having me on. It's been fun getting to catch up and talk a little bit.